So last week, Maryland announced a partnership with Anthropic to bring AI into state government. And they say that Claude will help process 150,000 documents monthly for benefits applications, speed up permitting, and handle environmental assessments. The headlines say innovation, but I want you to see something else. I want you to see subsidized labor funded by billionaires to capture market control. This is a pattern you need to watch for, not just in Maryland, but everywhere. Let me show you how it works. First, understand this. AI is labor. When Claude processes those 150,000 documents, it's doing work, the same work that Maryland caseworkers are currently doing. Claude is a worker, and right now, AI labor appears cheap. That's the pitch. Process more, faster, for less money. But AI is only cheap because billionaires are subsidizing it. Anthropic burns through billions of dollars every year. They're not profitable. They raise billions more from venture capital and private equity. They're selling AI labor below cost. Why? The platform monopoly game is pretty clear in the venture capital and private equity business. Underprice your service or raise massive amounts of money, underprice your service, sell it below cost, displace human workers, displace unions, become essential infrastructure, and raise prices. Once the humans are gone, the unions are gone, and you're indispensable. And this is what Uber is doing. This is what Amazon is doing. This is what DoorDash and all the other food delivery folks are doing. Lose money for years, subsidized by your investors, eliminate the competition, then capture the market. Right now, Maryland is getting a deal on AI labor that is artificially cheap. Now, let's look at who is implementing this in Maryland. Anthropic provides the AI. Claude is going to be in government. Anthropic is funded by a venture capital firm called General Catalyst. A new company called Percepta is doing the implementation. They are 100% owned by General Catalyst. Starting to see a connection here? Now, the Rockefeller Foundation, a nonprofit foundation, is providing the legitimacy to the deal and working with Percepta and Anthropic and General Catalyst in order to put a veneer on this of legitimacy. Now, who is Percepta? Well, their CEO is a former Palantir SVP. You know, and Palantir is famous for controversial government surveillance contracts, for building a system that works with ICE, for doing all of these really bad things. And here's what's interesting about this. Here's the timeline of when this happened. In October of 2025, General Catalyst publicly unveiled that this company, Percepta, who is going to be implementing Claude here in Maryland, they've formed Percepta as a new company in 2025. October of 2025. And then in November of 2025, Maryland announced a partnership with Percepta just 1 month after they had formed. Now, it's interesting. A company launched in October gets a major state government contract in November. That's not a competitive bid process. That's more like a prearranged deal. Now, General Catalyst just raised $8 billion. They bought a hospital in Ohio. They're buying up everything they can. They call themselves a transformation company. If we follow the dollar, we see what's getting transformed. That's Maryland taxpayer money. Maryland pays for Claude licenses. Anthropic and General Catalyst makes money. Maryland pays Percepta engineers. Percepta and General Catalyst make money. They're making money on both sides of this. And where do people like this meet? Well, here's a really interesting connection. Every July, there's a conference in Sun Valley, Idaho, Billionaire Summer Camp. Tech CEOs, venture capitalists, politicians, media moguls. Governor Wes Moore has attended this Sun Valley conference multiple times, 2023, 2024, 2025. It's really interesting that he's going to these. Now, 5 months after his July 2025 visit, he announces this partnership with companies in the General Catalyst portfolio, supported by foundations whose leaders sit on boards with other Sun Valley attendees. Now, the question here is, who doesn't get invited to Billionaire Summer Camp? The Maryland caseworkers processing those 150,000 documents right now. They don't get invited. Public employee union leaders don't get invited. The workers whose jobs are being automated, they don't get invited. The people who get displaced don't get a seat at the table while the deals are being made. This isn't a conspiracy. This is just how elite networks work. And so let's talk a little bit about how Maryland's AI policy is structured. Here's where it gets interesting. Maryland does have a pretty comprehensive AI policy. They passed it in 2018 or in 2024. A Senate bill mandated impact assessments for AI on rights, safety, environment, some other things. Now, what is not in there is job displacement. The law requires that the AI subcabinet make recommendations about job displacement, but it doesn't say anything about putting actual guardrails in place that would stop the kind of job displacement that's going to happen to those caseworkers who are processing the stuff that Claude's going to take from them. So here's another problem I want to talk about with this is, let's talk about some numbers here first. So again, I borrowed this number from the previous one. 500 state of Maryland jobs have already been eliminated this year through Westmore's government modernization efforts. And this integration of Claude into the government is another part of that. It is simply a part of the same modernization efforts that have been going on so far. And here's another one. According to an MIT study, $30 billion has been invested in corporate enterprise transformation, like the one they're trying to do with Claude in Maryland, yielding a 95% failure rate so far. So it's not even as if we're guaranteed to have this work. The record shows that this kind of investment actually doesn't work in order to produce better results for corporations or for governments. And here's another number. 10 to 20% unemployment is what is predicted by Anthropic CEO Dario Amedeo. Within 1 to 5 years of people using his product. So I think we have this really interesting thing happening here where we have a company that didn't exist a couple of years ago teaming up with a tech billionaire and an elite foundation in order to come and promise to basically replace government jobs for workers in Maryland. But here's almost the most revealing part. We can't actually see what the contracts are for this deal. When Maryland announces a landmark partnership like this, you'd expect to see contracts. You'd expect to see an amount of money that Maryland is paying for it. You might even expect to be able to go to the state procurement database and understand exactly how the deal worked. That's how it's supposed to work, at least, but that's not how it worked in this case. So let's look at this timeline again. In July of 2025, according to the press release that was announced about this, Percepta engineers began working with Maryland Department of Environment. October 25, Percepta announces itself as a public company. November 13th of 2025, Governor Moore announces a landmark AI partnership with Percepta, a company that's been working with the state of Maryland with no contracts and doesn't seem to have existed until before that. So wait, let's back up for a second here. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe we're not finding the contracts. Maybe there's something we're missing. But we had several people looking at this and we could not find Percepta in the state contracts, in the state contracting database. It's not there. Maybe it is. Maybe I searched wrong or something. If you find it, let us know. But shouldn't there be a contract in the procurement database that says how much we're paying these folks, or if somebody else is paying them? So a couple things to look for here. The first one is subsidized labor, right? AI is priced below cost, subsidized by the kind of billionaires that Westmore hangs out with in Idaho each summer. And then once humans are displaced, they're going to increase prices and make folks like Maryland dependent on them. The next thing is the way that the networks work. The governor is at a billionaire conference with tech CEOs and venture capitalists. Those same venture capitalists own the implementation company and invest heavily in the AI company, and workers are excluded from the decision-making room. Who was in the room? That's a good question, but we don't know because the billionaire summer camp doesn't really publish like what the meeting schedule was or what was decided there. Another thing I think we want to point out here is that while the law requires impact assessment on privacy, security, bias, things like that, it doesn't require any of that when it comes to the workforce. We must have AI rules that protect the workforce, protect the displaced workers, and make sure that we're not getting rid of all the people who are processing those documents right now. So I think that I think that this is a really good story to keep an eye on. We need to figure out what happened with the contracts. We need to see the way that this is going to get implemented. And I think that the Rockefeller Foundation and Anthropic and Governor Moore want this to be a model for your state too. So I think it's really important that we keep an eye on this, that we make sure we see what's happening, and that we demand policy at the government level that is going to ensure that if AI gets used, it is used not to displace workers, but to supplement what they do. Now, let me say here, I am not at all anti-AI. I'm not even anti-Claude. I work with Claude on a regular basis for campaign stuff, for job stuff, for things like that. It's my favorite of the models in a lot of ways, and it is friendly. Its friendliness should not gloss over the fact, though, that it is trying to take work and it is trying to take jobs. And in this case, it looks like it's probably going to start with taking the work of some caseworkers in the state of Maryland who help process benefits.